Hello all, welcome back. In this video, we will be talking about how you can do external reconnaissance of various Azure services such as storage accounts, hosted databases, web apps, virtual machines, SQL DBs, etc. Now, why do you want to do it in the first place? Now, if you in a red teaming engagement, imagine that you know that a company is using Azure infrastructure or Azure for powering its underlying services. You definitely want to try and look at from an unauthenticated user's perspective if the company is using any of these Azure services and if it's misconfigured in any way. One very sort of very prevalent example that attackers use this is open storage accounts. A lot of people leave their storage accounts open, and there are a lot of sensitive files inside that storage account, and thus you are at a place where you have a lot of sensitive information, and this is all before you even get a user identity or before you compromise a user identity, right? So we're going to be using a very interesting tool called Cloud Enum. This is a open source tool written by this gentleman, and the idea is it is just going to brute force various Azure services using its FQDN. It is going to check for storage accounts. It is going to check for open blob storage containers inside those storage accounts. It is going to check for databases, virtual machines, and web applications. Now, since this whole video series is sort of focused on Azure, I'll not be picking up stuff related to AWS or GCP, but just to sort of have some situational awareness, this tool also supports other cloud solutions as well, like AWS and GCP. Now we will pick up our own tenant, which is Pikachu, and we'll be using our own keyword, which is Pikachu, sort of a unique thing for people to put inside the cloud environment. So we'll try to find out what is our exposed infrastructure. Now what it does is it takes a file called fuzz.txt, and it is going to mutate all sort of it is going to create its own permutations basis the list that is out there. Now the list is actually very simple. This is sort of like when you go and look at the txt file, you will see it's all common terminology which is generally used in containers or generally used in virtual machines and stuff like that. So as you can see, there are a lot of DNS timeout on a lot of these storage accounts. Now, not everything that you find a DNS timeout is a positive hit or a false positive hit. The reason for that is since this is doing a lot of brute forcing, it generally so happens that the service provider, which in this case is Azure, might just block them out, or there is a latency issue on my end as well. That can also be a problem. It's worth checking these storage accounts again if they are open or not, but in my experience I have seen anything that gets a timeout is generally not it's generally a false positive hit. So anything that is a true positive hit, you will actually find it in this format in a green text which says it's a HTTPS only account and this is the storage account name. And guess what, it is also going to go inside and do a check of what are the containers inside this particular storage account. And when you see this, you actually see that the storage account has a container called admin and a container called debug actually open to the public. But in this case, the container was empty, but this container actually has a file in it as well. So, and this we have identified without actually authenticating to Azure. This is like from external ecosystem, right? And you also find there is a Azure file account which is present, but it did not do any further brute force of this particular Azure file account. Now this particular process of taking all the keywords and attaching this particular DNS name for file is going to be file.co.windows.net. For blob, it is going to be blob.co.windows.net. It is going to take our keyword and it is going to attach this particular term, like it can be templates, it can be temp, it can be TMP, it can be TMP logs, etc., etc., and it is going to identify them using this brute force method. Now, that being said, is this the only way in which we can identify Azure accounts? Absolutely not. In fact, uh, there is one way which I kind of like as well, using the name check availability API inside Azure. So inside Azure, you basically have something called as name check availability, where the thing is, it is going to check for the same DNS name, but it is going to do it through an API, right? And this is kind of available with every Azure resource. So for instance, if you can see this documentation, this is for the Azure. I think this is for yeah, this is for general name check availability, right? If yeah, sorry, Microsoft.web. So this for websites. So if a resource is available or not, you give the subscription ID. You can give your own subscription ID, and you can start using this name check availability API to see if that DNS name is available or not. This is the same name check API that's called whenever you go to Azure portal and when you try to create a particular resource. It is going to ask you for like it's going to check automatically. It's not going to ask you, but it's going to check if that particular name is available for you to take. For instance, I'll show you an example of this particular storage account. You can see if when I check admin, it's going to check if admin is available or not. It says the admin is actually taken. Now when you sort of see what's happening internally, you just go to network and clear all the logs, and when you type in Pikachu Jira, you sort of see there is an API request that is actually sent, and this API request is using the same API, which is the check resource name, and it's going to return if this particular name is available or not. In this case, this is available, and you sort of can see the response. It says okay, give me 1 second. Yeah, the name available is true, right? So again, as I've told you before, this is not the only tool. You could, for all you know, just pick up this particular API request, copy it as curl bash, or you can copy it as PowerShell and you can write a script around it, and just automate this and get and be done with it, right? Or you could simply use the tool that is available out there. But it is important for you to understand what actually are various ways to do this reconnaissance. Now, one key thing to note is when I say you can check it using this account, you don't really need to be a part of that organization. Now, although for the sake of this demo, we are actually a part of the same organization, but you can do it with your own Azure account, your own Azure account, which has no relation whatsoever. You're just checking if this name is available or not. Now, why the checking of the name is actually important is when you sort of check if this name is available or not. If this says this is taken, it means it is being used by this organization, maybe Pikachu. Not in every case, but there is a good chance that this is being used by that organization. So it is also important that you exercise some caution when you're trying to use this, because people tend to use common names such as government or stuff like that, right? And you definitely don't want to end up going out of your scope of engagement and access other files and stuff like that. So yeah, that's all for this video, and looking forward to see you guys again. Bye bye.